share this again. So continuing on with this will be the second video on international fundraising. So we talked a lot about the who international fundraisers are. They're owner managers and families who are trying to raise less than $100 million. These owners or families can be based in South America. They could be based in Africa. They could be based in the Caribbean, for instance. But the point is, you're non-U.S. Your business is non-U.S. So even if you're a U.S. person living in outside of these countries, Europe, wherever, and your business is not in the U.S., but you want to raise capital in the U.S. because the U.S. is the most dynamic place to raise capital, then this international fundraising is something that is going to impact you, and you can save a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of heartache, a lot of get your plans organized if you take these things into account up front. So I'm just gonna spend a drink here. So we talked about the regulated financial system and the difference between the regulated financial system and the wealthy investors who have lots of capital, have all their money and they're saved in portfolios and cash in private banks. Private banks have, compliance departments, and compliance departments and compliance people in private banks and trustee companies and regulated businesses like to deal with other regulated entities, persons, and businesses. But of course, they do deal with other types of people, but it depends on how big your company is and how much compliance risk or international risk that they perceive that you present. So let's just say that for now, because this obviously requires a lot more detail to look at what is the nature of international compliance risk, but we'll get into that a lot later. So for now, we've got the financial system. It's the regulated financial system and the unregulated financial system. You, as a owner manager or a family person who owns a business which is international, you have a U.S. holding company, either a U.S. corporation or a U.S. LLC, and you've got your business back in Chile or Peru or Colombia or wherever. At the end of the day, that's an international business. If you've got most of your activity occurring outside of the U.S. system. So things are very different for you if you are doing international business and international systems. As I said before, U.S. advisors, lawyers, tax lawyers, accountants, financial planners, you name it. Many of them are busy dealing with the U.S. domestic market, which is the biggest capital market in the world, billions and billions, hundreds of millions. They're not short on business. The US is very dynamic. They're all busy doing business. But of course, there's the multinationals who are very international, very large US international firms who do business all over the world. We see them all the time in the news. They seem to do international business with with ease. They're, nothing is really talked about, there's no difficulty really talked about in going international. Now, if you're raising $5 or $10 million from US investors, you need to realize that there's a big difference between the challenges that you are going to face trying to raise $10 or $15 million from 5 or 10 investors in the US versus BlackRock, who is investing billions and billions of dollars in Japan and China and other places, and over making it look basically easy. Like watching Usain Bolt run the 100 meters in 10 seconds, right? It looks easy, but of course we all know there's a ton of preparation and a lifetime of preparation and other things in the background that we never got to see prior to the race at the stadium. So that's a regulated and unregulated system that you're aware of. Your investors' money is held in a regulated environment. So what you have to see, what we'll talk about more in this video, is the fact of the compliance gateway. You have to realize that compliance is very much a gateway. It's a gateway that you have to pass through to be able to contact your investors. I just want to go back a bit just before I talk about the compliance gateway, and just remember that the other thing about raising capital in the US is that US investors are, you cannot use finders or introducers and pay people who are unregulated a success fee or a commission fee for raising capital in the US. That works in a lot of other countries, maybe like Canada, Caribbean, in South America, in Europe, UK. Maybe you can pay people to just go out there, talk to their network, raise capital, pay that person a commission if they successfully bring an investor who wants to invest in your idea. You cannot do that in the US. Don't do it. Depending on who you're talking to in the US, people will either tell you or they won't tell you. They'll just withdraw or say nothing. And I find that people often say nothing because the US is a very litigious environment and people don't want to get caught up in drama. So they won't say anything. They actually just won't say anything. They go quiet, or they pass it on to their advisor who, will keep your prospectus or whatever it is you give them for 2 weeks and also say nothing. So if you do find yourself moving forward with someone who has offered you the deal of basically acting as a finder or introducer in the US, that's not great. It's not good. You're not being clever. You're not going to circumvent anything. And as I say, we certainly will not become involved with anyone who is doing that. And I suggest that you don't either. Don't believe me, don't listen to me. I'm not a US lawyer, even though I've studied US tax law for over 5 years now. What I suggest you do is go and speak to a US securities lawyer for not much money, for maybe 2-3 hours. Sit down with a US securities lawyer for 2-3 hours, and they will tell you a lot of what I am talking about here. The reason why I think this isn't general knowledge is because a lot of US securities lawyers are not busy talking to lots and lots of international people who are trying to raise capital in the US. They're all very busy dealing with US domestic advisors, and of course they will deal with small international people if they come to them and pay for their time or what have you. But my experience is we work closely with one set of one US securities lawyer in particular for our clients, for the clients that we have who are raising capital in the US. But I've spoken to many others, and it's quite amazing to me. This is why we've decided to produce these videos and get the word out. I'm tired having this conversation with numerous people, friends, contacts, especially contacts of our clients, who say, oh, just have a chat with Jonathan. I mean, I don't mind, but of course, it takes up a lot of time. Let's say it's not, we ourselves are not investors. We don't act as finders in the US. We don't act as introducers. Only our clients who are running international structures with us will we help them, again, because we want all of our clients to remain compliant wherever they're doing business. The US just happens to be one of the most dynamic places in the world to raise capital. Everyone comes to the US to raise capital. I've lived in Miami, and we have an office in Miami Beach now. And, working with my local business partner in Miami Beach, I've come to understand the ecosystem there. And it's amazing to see all the people from all over the world come to Miami Beach to engage in some lifestyle. But there's a ton of fundraising and deal making and other things that kind of informally goes on in Miami Beach. It's quite, and Miami, it's quite amazing. A lot of the New York movers and shakers come down and deal with the decision makers who are all living their best life. A lot of them living their best life in Miami Beach. That's, there's a lot of that. It's not the only place in the world that this happens, but of course there's a lot of that. So, we've seen it. We've seen a lot of this over the last 4 years, and that kind of explains why a lot of people come to the U.S. to raise capital here. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about as I say, the compliance gateway. So, we've explained that, let's say you're talking to U.S. investors, your proposition is great, it's compelling, your prospectus is fantastic, they like you, they get your drive, it's all positive, discussion, everything is going well. Okay, so get to the point now where you send them the documents, they like it, I give it to my advisor. So they give it to their advisor. Now, the advisor, whether it's their lawyer, tax lawyer, it's going to be someone who's, very commercial, very capable. And that gentleman or that lady will either be one of two things. They will either have experience with international and say, okay, fair enough, and they will assess it on the merits, or they won't have much experience with international, and they will view this international idea as one which is very, very risky, very, very out of bounds. Some people may go as far as to say, don't do that. That's international. That's outside of the US. Why would you want to do that? And again, we're talking here about family-owned businesses investing in a 10, 15, 20, $30 million in some venture, be it a hotel or a gold mine or a lithium mine or an oil and gas field, in this range of $50 to $100 million or anywhere from $5 to $100 million. This is normally the dynamic that you come across. And so, let's say then that the person is, is like, okay, on the merits, it looks good. The numbers look great. The cash flow is great. This guy is commercial. He's been doing this for a while. Let's go for it. So they say, okay, they say, yes, let's do it. The investor says, okay, calls up their relationship manager at the private bank and says, okay, let's get $5 million over to Jonathan. He's a really great guy. We love him. He's very impressive, very impressive. Let's get $5 million, out of the portfolio and get it over to him. And the relationship manager says, fine. And then he basically says, the trust, which, owns our holding company or whatever, will basically be making this investment, and the instruction goes down. Ultimately, once the compliance department of the private bank gets hold of it, the proposition, the idea, the prospectus, whatever, they go through it all, and they see, okay, so you're asking us to buy shares in a BVI company that holds, that owns a U.S. company that basically then owns an oil field in Brazil. And, this business is, the investment is 5 million, but the business is worth, say, 50, 60 million. The oil field is based in Brazil. It's a small scale, small scale oil field, but very profitable. Lots of cash flow coming off. But the compliance department is going to look at it and say, right, well, first things, this, it's in Brazil. It's a small investment. It's owned by a family or one or two people. It's, the company and there's a company in the BVI, and this is a completely unregulated investment, and we believe that this is high risk. We don't know who the directors of the company are in Brazil. In Brazil, as in many countries in Latin America, limited liability doesn't work the same way as it works in the US or in the Commonwealth or the UK. That's another video that we'll go through, that people generally, this is now for US investors, need to appreciate, but I don't want to get distracted. I'll come back to that in another video. And so basically, the compliance people will plug the factors into their risk management, compliance risk management program, and it will spit out a score, which will likely be high. And if the risk score is high, then basically they're not, the word's going to come back to the compliance manager. We can't do this investment. This client can't do this investment. It's an unregulated structure, too high risk. we're not doing it. So the word is no. Now, funny enough, a lot of people don't realize this because, a lot of owner managers, who are in the process of making their money, they're not quite there yet where, they've got, they're not wealthy, and they haven't made 150 million and had that spread across US and Swiss private banks. They're not, they're too busy making money. They're really good at making money. They're operators. They've not been just, like other people who've done it and have lots of experience with private banks, or you might not be third or fourth generation wealthy where, you're operating, but you've had a lot of experience with private banks. And so how it's going to go from the get-go. Those guys, those people who, have lots of experience with regulated capital and finance and all the rest of it, they don't run into these problems because they know pretty much what I'm telling you. This is not rocket science. It's just a matter of being aware of this information and doing it. I'm not an expert or anything like that. Anyone can research this or say, for instance, if you're from a wealthy family, you will know these things, right? But a lot of people who are, talented, on their way up, moving from being an engineer to buying your first oil field, or moving from being an engineer to buying your first gold mine, or moving out of real estate and into gold mining, or whatever it is you're doing. A lot of people might not know, and you don't know. And so what happens is the private bank compliance department actually says to the compliance department says to the relationship manager no. And the relationship manager meekly passes on the answer to the advisor and the investor and says, no, you can't do this. If you're going to do this, you'll have to leave. You'll have to leave our private bank. And of course, the last thing the investor wants to do is, in order to get this investment, no matter how good it is, he's not going to upend trigger 6 months of work to move his entire portfolio to a new bank, which will probably give him the same answer anyway. So they're not going to do it. And so everything goes quiet and the deal isn't going to happen. Okay. And so let me go back to I danced over something. The private bank is going to enter information describing your deal and the structure and everything into their platform. And now, increasingly, private banks, regulated institutions, this is not a case of a compliance individual person where you, and that's another thing, the investor says, okay, well, I'll call up your private bank compliance department and tell them that, this is, we're good people and we know what we're doing, and you can't do this and blah, blah, blah. No, you will not be able to talk to the compliance department at a private bank. So that's not going to work. It's not going to happen. You won't be allowed to, you won't be able to get in touch with them. So that's not going to work. So what you have to understand about compliance today, it's being automated. Private banks have thousands and thousands, and the largest ones, maybe they have hundreds of thousands of clients. These guys are automating compliance. I mean, we've all seen ChatGPT 4 and GPT 3.5 and all these things and the artificial intelligence. So as you can imagine, this is being automated. It's being automated. Compliance is being automated. So once your factual situation goes into the machine, it's going to spit out a high risk score. And so that means that you're not going to be able to get your investment capital. And so the regulated financial system is becoming, or the financial system, as it were, is becoming more transparent. So, the less transparent you are, the more risk is going to be registered or accumulated in these automated algorithms, in these systems, and the more blockage you are going to get when it comes to raising capital in the US. This impacts operators as well, people who are doing international business, but that's another video. We'll talk about that separately. So you have to really take into account that, if you, as an unregulated business structure offering or raising capital in the US, and let's assume that you've done things the right way with a broker dealer, a U.S. securities lawyer, and you've hired a consultant to help you do your marketing, or you've got the right Reg D, 506C, or whatever it is, whatever your SEC registered offering is, and you were able to get in contact with some US investors, if you have a high risk score at the get-go, from the get-go, you're not going to get the investment from these people who are all using regulated, all of their money is in regulated platforms, banks, institutions, and you have a high risk score, and they're not going to basically access capital for you, because they're not going to unwind their wealth management and tax structures, just to basically make one investment. That's why a lot of people in the US say, oh, it's easier to just do business, especially at this level of family-owned businesses or owner managers. A lot of them say it's easier for us to do domestic business. But the reality is, on the flip side, of course, in my opinion, a lot of US owners and business owners are losing out, because they don't realize that the biggest arbitrage is actually when they go international. But on the flip side of that, what they'll say is that, well, there's a ton of risk. There's a ton of risk, including fraud and other things. So the reality is that it's only it's only the tenacious few who will, who are successful, and many are, and it can be done and it can be dealt with. It's not a problem. The answer to the compliance problems are are not simple, but there are answers to it. One, you can use a regulated asset manager to introduce that into your system, into your international structure, because normally coming out of Latin America, many people structure through the Caribbean. And you can introduce a regulated asset management company into the structure. That's one way of introducing a regulated platform, so that you can then, which will in turn present to the U.S. with a U.S. corporation or LLC, which is owned by a regulated asset manager, and then you can do your SEC registering from there. And that's one way. You can reduce risk by using captive insurance companies, right? And you can either set up your own regulated asset manager, or you can set yourself up as an advisor to a regulated asset manager that basically provides a platform for US persons to invest. All these things we will go through in detail, because these solutions and approaches are explained in books. I find, the main thing I think is, I haven't seen much of it joined up well in books and things like that, but so we're just providing context here and joining it all up so that people can follow through. And as I say, I really want to post these videos because I'm, explaining this to people myself. As you can see, it takes a lot of time over and over again saying the same thing. So, we're going to break this down in these videos, and then, what I can do in future is point people to, these videos so they can consume the way forward for themselves. It's not a problem. We want to help people get these things done. So I'm going to finish it there. We've just talked about, why the investors, U.S. investors, have their money in private banks and other regulated institutions and trustees. These people are all regulated. They're all incentivized to block any their clients investing in anything which is international and unregulated and less than $100 million. And that means 5, 10, 20, $50 million, anything. Remember, I'm not talking about you, the sort of medium size, large businesses doing more than $100 million, or, billionaires, and, so what is he talking about? This doesn't make any sense. Not talking about you who, the larger people, larger business owners and what have you, don't have any problem because you have lots of capital in your private bank, and you're able to get your private bank to do all these things for you. Like, I know you can. It's not, you guys don't have the problems. It's the smaller owner managers who are on their way up, the family-owned businesses who are on their way up, who are struggling right now. And we continue to have to explain this to people over and over again, which we're happy to do, but now it's going to be done by a series of videos. So in the next video, we're going to go through we're going to go through some other stuff, probably about how to, what the solutions are and how to deal with registering your investment offer, and how basically all the things that you would need to do. And again, the theme is, if you can't wait for the rest of these videos to come out, just go spend $4,000 with a U.S. securities lawyer. Take a notebook, and they'll map out exactly what I'm saying, and probably more to you. You do want a U.S. securities lawyer, probably in New York or Miami, one that has experience with international, and one that has experience of dealing with people like yourself. Because again, if you go to a U.S. securities lawyer who's only used to working for large, Wall Street firms, a lot of these international, intricacies will be lost on them. And so, you don't want to waste time going to ask, so don't go to a magic circle firm like White and Case and all this kind of stuff. If you're an owner manager or a family-owned business and you're doing a $20 million, $15 million deal, you probably want a securities lawyer who's a sole practitioner. You can find these guys on LinkedIn. I know my people from South America. We all love Miami. There's quite a few of them in Miami. You can find these guys very easily, these guys and ladies, on LinkedIn. And you can go find them and pick one, and whoever you like, and go and have a chat with them. Take your notebook, pay for 3-4 hours of advice, and sit down with them, take notes, and map your way forward. So that's standing advice and suggestions. What I will do is, as we continue to lay this out, we will continue to encourage people to do that and save themselves a lot of aggravation. Because I can't tell you, I've seen any number of people, many people actually now at this point, more than 50 people, personally me, I've seen, leave South America, wherever, and come to the US and move and start and spend over a year doing things, talking to investors, people, communicating, doing all these things, and then without ever talking to a U.S. securities lawyer. Because a lot of people, when it comes to fundraising, they have this kind of, don't spend any money, a cent up front, get it all done by introducers and people on a success fee basis or whatever, which of course, as we've pointed out before, is not something that you can do in the US. And again, look that up for yourselves on law firms websites. Many law firms in the US will tell you that. So yeah, just save yourself the time, the aggravation. Speak to a US securities lawyer if you want to raise capital in the US. It is true that there are a lot of fantastic investors and exciting people in the US, and a lot of these guys are very interesting. The US is a big, dynamic place, but it is difficult. It is difficult because when you're smaller and you're not regulated, and you're not coming via institutions and all the rest of it. You've really got to get your list of items and tick your boxes. Okay, more to follow. Cheers.